Are you someone who dreams of being an entrepreneur? Or maybe you're a leader seeking fresh ideas and strategies? Look no further. Tune in to Schmidt List, led by Kurt Schmidt, president at Foundry, a Minneapolis-based design consultancy, and author of The Little Book of Networking. In each episode, you'll gain valuable insights from some of the most influential minds in the world of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Prepare yourself for enlightening discussions that will motivate you to improve yourself and your business.
I'm excited today to talk to one of my good friends, Jaime. She's going to be talking to us about her new book and about all the things that have to do with it. Speaking of new books, I should mention that I also have a book and you should check it out. It's on Amazon, The Little Book of Networking. It's available now and I'm getting a ton of great feedback. So I'm really excited to talk about Jaime. And we'll also maybe touch on Jaime's writing process a little bit because I am curious about that. I don't know if you are, but I don't care because it's my show. So we're going to do that. All right, Jaime, how are you today?
Oh, I love you. This is why I love coming on here.
I'm so glad to see you. So tell the audience a little bit about the work you do.
Yeah. So I'm the CEO of Keystone Group International. We are a boutique strategic management consulting firm. And so we focus on helping organizations in the small and mid-market grow with less pain. So we can't eliminate pain altogether, but we're really focused on helping clients understand the next ceiling the business is going to hit, see around the next corner so that they can plan that in and really figure out how to scale in the right way.
Is that work, the consulting work is what pushed you to writing the books?
Yes and no. And so you've been down this path now and I'm writing a book and you don't write a book to, number one, make money or to save time because it takes your life for each one that you put out. So the latest book, the culture book that we'll talk about was much more focused on the business. That first book was focused on something that was just inside me. Yeah. And so I think this is the interesting thing as leaders. So we talk to a lot of leaders about is it's the whole leader and there's personal things that are part of us, our experience and the way we kind of grew up, even in our careers. And that's very different than kind of the businessy side of what we do. But oftentimes for me, they intersect on a daily basis because of the role, right, that I have and the kind of work that we do. So I would say they're both inspired by the work that we do, but they weren't necessarily driven by we didn't need to have it and have either of these books to do the work that we do. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think what happened with me was I just kept seeing the same patterns over and over and over and over again. And I just had to address them. Like I had to put it all in one area for my sanity first. And then I thought, as I started to do that, I thought, other people will benefit from this.
Right. And that's what most authors is you start. And so I think our journeys were probably similar, right? I've had a podcast for almost 6.5 years. It's crazy to think.
It's an interesting journey that you go on that kind of just steers you down its own path. You never know what's going to happen. And that's why I encourage so many people that have interest to give it a try because you might not turn into Ira Glass or something, but that's fine. That's not the point. I think doing this type of work is just like you said, it's more about the journey than it is about necessarily the return or the expected return or whatever the case may be. Right. So let's jump into, I'm going to segue again. Let's talk about expected return. So in your book, you talk a lot about culture and leadership. What do you see post-pandemic now in terms of the struggles? Because we talked during the pandemic a lot about the struggles people were having during the pandemic. What are you seeing now? Is it the same things? Is it different? Has it reverted to all the same things that were before the pandemic? What are the sorts of struggles and things that you're seeing leaders dealing with more so nowadays?
Yeah, I think it feels like it's been amplified, but it's changed since the pandemic. So the pandemic was intense in a different way, right? And what they were dealing with, it was like we were running on adrenaline. And there's this whole kind of idea now that we were all at kind of our surge limit, which is an actual psychological thing that's happening. It could only stay there for so long. And so what we're now seeing in the studies are actually proving it is that we're at this kind of like the gas tank is empty and we're still trying to rev the car. And that's the burnout. You use whatever term you want to use. But I just think a lot of us are emotionally exhausted with kind of doing it the same way and doing the same thing and not getting the results, right? Or the healing. And I really think it is healing that we're looking for. So what I talk about a lot, and I do a lot of keynote speaking, and my topic is called bridging the gap. And so we talk about this gap that's been created, and it's always been there in organizations, between organizations and their employees and leaders and their employees. But I think that gap has widened. And the reason being is that leaders are really tired and they're underwater and they're trying to keep everything together every day, both personally and professionally. And their organizations are trying to survive a level of global risk that we've never had to deal with before. And on the other side, we have employees who are just like, I need to be filled up and I want more from my leaders. And your leaders have nothing to give in many organizations right now, right? Because they're so depleted. And so we're just seeing that gap kind of widen. And it's not super negative. It's just this, like, both of us standing on either side going like, I don't know how to bridge the gap, right? I don't know how to give me more than I'm already giving.
Yep. Yeah. And I see that too, just especially back to your point about being just exhausted, is that everybody's exhausted. It's not just leadership, and it's not just the front of the line workers and people. It's just people are tired. And I think some of the good leaders I'm seeing these days are really recognizing that. And I think the ones that I see shining are spending more time on self-care than they did previously, or just some version of that. Could you talk a little bit about self-care in leadership? Because I know it's a passion of yours as well. Yeah. But some people, they feel guilty, right? They feel guilty that I'm taking time for myself. I could be working on the business. I could be meeting with clients and employees. Explain to me a little bit about your mindset around that self-care when it comes to being a leader in today's world.
Yeah. So I would just say I'm still a work in progress in this, but this year, in 2023, the last 7 and 8 months have been a focus for me, because I really reached a point where I was at the verge of burnout and I could feel it and I knew it. My family could feel it. And so I had to make some pretty serious decisions, right, on just for my own health. And what I did is I leaned on kind of my spiritual practice, my meditation, a foundation that felt like it was more stable for me to kind of find that calm in the storm. And so that idea of peace being, you've got to go somewhere else to find it. And what I realized is you can find it every moment of every day. It's just whether you choose it. And so we're talking to leaders a lot about that. We're doing more workshops and work with leaders on purpose and personal why and energy and flow. So if people have heard about flow, there's a lot of studies being done around flow. And even from a leadership standpoint, how much more productive you are when you're in flow. But in order to be in flow, you've also got to rest and repair, right? To be able to get into it. And so it's this whole, like, they're studying the human body. And this is things we've known for a really long time. But I think it's just gotten to a point where so many people, it's where a lot of mental health issues are coming from, because we're just not hearing the warning signs. I always talk about the rumble strips on the side of the road. We're not paying attention to them. Yep. And if you don't pay attention to them, your body will take pretty severe action to get you back in line.
Yeah, because it's just going to happen. And I've said this to people, when pressure builds, it's going to come out. And if you don't have a channel for that, it's going to come out in all sorts of weird ways. It'll come out during family time. It'll come out with time with friends. It'll come out on vacations. If you don't have a release valve, an intentional release valve, that is. Right. And I know some people, like, I go to the gym. That exercise helps me. I do meditation. I go to therapy. I take medication, whatever the case may be.
Wow. Yeah.
Like these people are people that have put a valve in place to let that steam off. And I think that's something I struggled with early in my career. And not to say, woe is me, white male, but, I was taught that you just kind of rub some dirt in it and move on. And you don't talk about your feelings. And a lot of the men that I coach these days, I feel like are becoming much more and more open to the idea of seeking help in these situations. But I still think it's a struggle. But I encourage anybody listening to this show, if you're feeling frustrated and struggling and you can't think of that release valve, go and find it, because it will come out in unusual and unwarranted ways that you will regret later.
Well, and talk about coaching or therapy or, there's a lot of places that can help also, to help you reframe just the stress you're carrying and kind of what's going on. But as much as I'm saying I'm working on it, I did a LinkedIn post it was probably early May. And I've been running hard for 3 weeks, like travel, right? Day and night running hard. And I just knew it and I could feel it. And for me, it starts to tighten here. Like my chest starts to get tight at all hours of day and night. Like I know my back starts to hurt. Like I know it's coming. And I woke up one Friday morning and I was supposed to go to this big conference, great conference, local. I get to see a bunch of people I love to see, had tickets. And I woke up and I was like, my body physically would not get out of, like I physically couldn't move.
Yep.
And I took a picture of my feet from my bed saying, this is where I'm at today. Really wanted to be someplace else, but I didn't listen. Right. And so many people reacted to that and said, oh, I've had that same experience, or gosh, you're reminding me that I've got to do something different. And so, Kurt, just even us having this conversation is normalizing it for people. If there's not something wrong with you, it just means you don't have the right energy management system in place and you should probably try something else.
I love the idea of an EMS. I love the acronyms are great, because I think part of the problem can be is if you've never really asked for help before,
right?
How do you know how to ask for help? And a lot of times it's your peers that you go to for suggestions for things like that. But that's why I'm always pushing on networking and building your network, because you can learn so much more from a broader audience than maybe just the close friends that you have, other professionals that maybe are dealing with very similar stresses.
Right.
That you are, right? And because your stress is unique to you, it's not something that everybody experiences the same amount of stress or the same type of stress, or it doesn't affect them the same way. So I think that's really powerful. I love the idea of an EMS, an energy management system. I like that.
Like you're having with your male clients, even coaching, there's a lot more people that are willing to talk about this, even in a networking setting, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's how I'm feeling. Here's what I've done about it. We're seeing a huge uptick with a lot of our clients in their EAP, their employee assistance programs that they offer. So there's therapists you can call. There's people for just different help that you already got in some organizations you already have access to that we just don't use. And so just going and finding those resources sometimes can make a huge difference.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Doing the research and the work can really start to help show you what might be a good fit for you or what might be comfortable for you. Because as my dad always said, if you can't grow personally, your business can't grow. And I've seen it over and over again. I'm sure you've seen it, right? Where business leaders who are trying to grow their businesses, if they're not working on themselves, it's pretty evident where the stagnation in the business is coming from.
That was 2022 for me. I've been sharing this very transparently. Is 2022, I made it through COVID with a small business and I was fine. 2022 was the hardest year for me personally as a leader. My business was fine. My personal life was fine. For me as a leader, it was a different kind of challenge. It was a different level of stress. It was some pretty big hiring mistakes and things that happened that I just hadn't hit that level, right? Of kind of growth. Yeah. And it was really, really hard. And if I had not had some of these and if I had not recognized it, like it would have been really detrimental. I think even more so from a health standpoint, but I caught it early enough to say, I can't continue down this path. It's not going to help anyone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's the first thing as a true leader needs to do is hold up the mirror, right? Be like, what am I doing? It's very easy to blame the world around you for attacking you and causing all of these things. But what are you doing about it? How are you reacting to it? Are you taking a closer look at that? And I find that more and more of the books these days and the more of the leadership content is less about sort of the old school Jack Welch GM sort of model, right? Where he was very, very top down, command and control. And the more command and control you gave to people, the happier they were going to be in their jobs and things like that, right? So, but nowadays there is a lot more effort around understanding why we're feeling the way we're feeling and how those feelings impact our actual bottom line. They really do. They really, the choices you make in the minute and the decisions you make, right? Because both you and I have worked with sort of easygoing leaders, but we've also worked with those high anxiety leaders, right? That are texting you at 11 o'clock at night, wondering about something really dumb that could wait till the next day. Doesn't really matter.
No boundaries is what I call it. Yes.
Well, exactly. But again, that's because they don't have boundaries and they wonder why they're so high anxiety, right? But that's why I say, like, you hold up the mirror and you can see that. And I think books like the books that you've produced and others in this sort of genre really allows somebody to understand that place of vulnerability is actually a place of strength.
Yeah, that's what we talk about, the evolution, and it's in our culture book, to this conscious leadership is what we call it, right? We have training programs around it. Like, that's kind of our mantra, is that leadership has to be more conscious, and consciousness means it's much more intentional, but it's also very human centric. And it's based on the idea of love, care, and respect for each other. Because when those things exist, we can move mountains as a company. We can overcome really big adversity as a company, and we can go through a lot of big change as an organization, which all affects our bottom line if we're successful. It makes us more competitive in the market, right? Our customers feel it and they see something different. So you're seeing all this data. And that was part of the book, is collecting a lot of this to say, there are so many studies now pointing, right, to the idea that culture and leadership and strong leadership has a direct impact on the bottom line for a business.
Yeah. Well, and can you talk to me, because this is something I struggled with early in my career, because there's a line between the love and respect and the vulnerability, but also being in charge and having to be responsible for the future of things. So my first management job, I was like, I'm just going to make everybody my friends, and then they're all going to want to work for me and do stuff for me. And what a mistake that was. It was terrible. Right. And I thought after that experience, I was like, I should not lead people. I'm not good at this. But talk to me about that line. Where do you coach people to draw the line? Because I do want to be human centric. I do want to coach people, but I need them to perform. I need, not just for myself, but for them too, for their benefit, so I can keep giving them raises and more benefits and all these things. So can you talk to me about how do you draw the line? How do you know where that line is?
Yeah. So it's not a perfectly black and white line, but one thing that comes to mind.
Draw me a picture. Show me where the exact line is, Jamie.
Anything that is perfectly black and white today, if you would just let me know what it is, because I can't find it. Everything feels gray. But what it brings me to, and I'd be happy to offer this if anybody reaches out. We have a great worksheet on this. We use in our leadership trainings what we call the invite challenge matrix to help leaders kind of understand their leadership style and maybe where they might be falling short in helping some of their team get to high performance. And so if I draw it in the air, right? It's 4 quadrants, and invites on the top, bottom, and challenges to the left and right. And the idea is that if I asked you to name somebody in your life that has had a huge impact on you, right? That could be your high school coach in a sport, or it could be a boss, or it could be someone in your family, anything, but everybody can think of someone. And the reason you can think of someone is because that person did 2 things for you. They invited you, and invite means they gave you their time. They gave you their wisdom, right? Advice. They gave you what you needed in order to grow. So that's the piece you're talking about that you're really good at. But that's not enough. That person also had to challenge you. And so when you think about the best coaches you've ever had or the best leaders you've ever had, they saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself, and they pushed you to be better than you thought you could be, right? They gave you a challenging project. They pushed you to apply for a different position, right? Or do something else, or to change jobs completely, maybe, right? Some of the best mentors are helping you rethink kind of the path you're on. And so that invite and the challenge is where the balance comes in. Because if you have an environment where it's all invite, but really low challenge, you have a cozy environment where people really like to work for you as a leader, but they're not really being challenged, and therefore the business maybe isn't producing the results. And so every person's in a different quadrant. If you think about somebody who is maybe earlier in their career, they need a little more invite than somebody who's been doing whatever you're leading them for 25 years. They might need a different challenge based on where they're at in their life, right? In the seasons of their career. And so it's that constant battle as a leader to, am I putting too much challenge on somebody with not enough invite? Meaning I gave them something really hard to do and then I disappeared. or being their friend, right? And I'm not pushing them to be the best version of them. It's not even about me at that point, right? It's about their growth. And so we're really helping leaders rethink, right, how they balance those two things.
I love that because I remember a great leader I worked with many, many years ago. I remember we had an all staff meeting at this other company and somebody stood up and said in all staff during questions, said, why do we keep growing? Why do we keep growing as a business? Why are we doing that? And they just responded with, well, why do you keep growing?
Uh-huh.
And we have to keep growing because you keep growing. It's not a matter of just grabbing more money, right? It's a matter of keeping pace with your employees, like you said, in the different seasons of their careers, right? We don't hire people to have them there for 6 months and then just swap them out like a spark plug or something.
Right. Right. And again, that's the hard part about leadership. When you sign up for leadership, it's a one-on-one game, right? Like each person is different and each person's carrying different experiences and diverse backgrounds and ideas and their own beliefs and sometimes limiting beliefs into the work that they're doing. And your job as a leader is just to help them unpack that with the right challenges, right? And the right mentoring and coaching. And I think there's a lot of people that get into leadership not realizing that that's their number one job.
Yeah. Right. They assume it's a lot of just telling people what to do and then checking the KPIs, right?
Right. And it's that 1980s industrial era, the direct command and control, directing and controlling is how we got things done. And I think where we see the biggest gap right now is leaders going, oh my God, nothing's working. Yeah. What I used to do isn't working. Like they don't have the right tools in their tool belt in this new era that we're kind of leading through, which includes the generational differences. And so our job is to invest in those people and get them the new tools that they need, knowing they have a good foundation that we can build on.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a rabbit hole we could go down like crazy, but I mean, the industrial complex and 100 years of assembly line sort of mentality, the way that schools are structured, it's very much to show you how to stay as a worker and be able to sit still for 8 hours and do work. And the rise of knowledge-based work over the last 40 years has just had not been as addressed, I think, as much. And we're seeing it a lot more and more because it's just forcing its way. Yes. It's just forcing its way through.
It's putting so much pressure on kind of the way we are built today, like you said, and it is a rabbit hole of like education and everything there. But what they're actually saying is the next 5 years is going to be more change than we've seen in the previous 40. So this also concerns me for the companies, the executive teams, the leaders that are like, whew, we made it through COVID. Like, are we like,
everybody get back in the office and let's get back to work. We're doing what we did before.
The way it was. And it's like that, there is no the way it was. And this isn't a big dramatic thing. That doesn't exist anymore. So the people that are still holding on to that are going to be in a lot of pain, right? From a leadership standpoint and from a retention standpoint in the very near future, if they don't start thinking about it differently, which is exactly why we wrote the book.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the first piece of advice I usually give leaders that say, oh, do you think I could get people to come back in the office now? Do you think it's okay? Can I just mandate it? Do you think they'll get mad? Or because we should just go back to the way we used to be. And my first response is always, this isn't growth for you. You're supposed to grow from these experiences, not go back to the what you thought were the good old days. If I was to talk to you back then, you wouldn't say they were good old days. You wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm living the salad days right now. It's just fantastic.
Right. And so we saw this a lot with clients where people learned a lot about themselves as a business, right? Yeah. And as leaders during the pandemic. And then when things got even a semblance of like relief, they like boomeranged back to the way it's almost like they forgot all of these cracks, right? And issues and things they saw that they were like, wow, we weren't as healthy as we thought we were. And then they went right back to where they're comfortable, right? They went right back to what they knew. It's muscle memory. And we didn't take the time to stop and reflect and say, maybe we need different muscles than we needed before.
Well, and that's the thing is that, I mean, I think there's the benefit of time where we think that those times felt better. But like I said, again, like any of those, I met those people before the pandemic. I knew the struggles and things that they had. They were not in a better place. They were in it was a different place. That's all.
Yes, it was a different place.
It wasn't necessarily better or different. So if you had some advice, you mentioned you feel, and studies have shown that there's a sea change coming. What should leaders be focused on right now as we're sort of going into the end of the year, into a new year coming up? If you had somebody saying, Jaime, what should I be focused on as a leader right now? What would be some of your first pieces of advice?
I'm going to make it really simple. And I know it's not simple in action always, but we are seeing with our clients where creating space for different conversations. And what I mean by that is instead of just running at 150 miles an hour every day, we're on autopilot, right? It's passing us by. Same thing's happening with our employees. It's stopping and scheduling, blocking time, right? Whether that's for you personally or it's for your team to have different conversations. And out of the book, we have these downloads. And the reason we created them is because we wanted to give them away because we wanted teams to stop and answer these questions together. Stop and talk about what's your culture vision statement? We've never talked about that before. Like, let's do that. And what happens is we're getting these people reaching out and saying the energy level was unbelievable when we all left the room from that meeting, right? We hate meetings. That's all we do. But we left that meeting and it felt different. And so just talk about however you end up doing it, take a team outing, go do something, but take the space and ask different questions, right? What can we do differently? What's working and what's not working today? Because I think so many of us are stuck in autopilot. And if no one ever asks us a different question, our brains are there's almost some atrophy happening in our brains, I think, because we're so focused on execution and just getting the next thing done that we're not focused on strategic thinking, right? We're not using that muscle. And I think we need to get back to that because I think it gives everyone hope again.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. The change is constant, right? That's the only constant we have, right? And if we're not anticipating change, if we're just trying to hold on, that can be a sense of frustration right away because you don't understand, like, why does the bus keep moving? I just wanted to hold still for a little while. And that's when I tell people, like, if that's a common occurrence, maybe you need to take a deeper dive into, are you in the right place? Generally, are you in the right role? Are you in the right industry? Even maybe you need to make a larger change in your career. It doesn't mean you stop being a leader. It just means maybe the space that your career has taken you to. Because every time I have somebody on this show, Jaime, I ask them, how did you get into the work that you're doing? Did you grow up? Were you a young woman saying, boy, I can't wait to run a consulting organization and write some books? And no, because our career takes us on a trajectory that obviously we have a good hand on the steering wheel, but a lot of times we're not in control of which gear we're in. The world can change the gears on us very quickly. So depending on the speed we're moving. And the idea of, well, maybe I should just hit the brakes and look around and say, am I on the right road in general? Right. Can be really hard for people, right? Because as you get older, you get more responsibilities, right? Oh, now I've got a mortgage. Maybe I've got kids. Maybe I've got a set vacation plan. I've got elderly parents, all these different things that sort of come into play in terms of responsibilities that even the idea of seeking out a new industry or change can be really scary, right? I can imagine moving from successful business leader to consultant is really scary. The idea of that.
Right. It is. But so this idea of if fear of controls, right? Everything we do in every day, then we live in that space, right? It affects so much of us. And we have a great kind of mindset shift that I use with a lot of our clients, because in all honesty, a lot of our clients and their businesses have gone through a lot of really crappy things, a lot, right? Supply chain and employee issues and just so many things. And what I tell leaders is I say, instead of just saying, why is this happening? Right? Or when will the change stop? reframing it to say, what could this be preparing me for? Because as we all look back in our careers, every misturn, every hardship, everything, right, that we had to get through built muscle for something we needed to know now. You and I would have never been having this conversation if we hadn't been through what we've each been through, right, on our journeys. We wouldn't have this wisdom. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. And there's a lot of wisdom I don't have, but I have it in some areas. And we're both willing to talk about it is probably the difference is we're a little bit sure now with the world. But whatever we thought about it is what's it preparing me for? And that's really what 2022 was for me is I constantly had to reframe and say, there has to be something coming that I need this now so that I can weather whatever that next thing is. And it really does change your mindset about what is happening to you in the present.
Yeah, it really does. And I think don't fight it, right? Let it wash over you and see how it works. Okay. Jaime, I can talk to you all day. I know you're busy. No. Let's get you back to doing that important work that you do. So if I want to connect with you, if I want to learn more about the book, where should I go and where should I find out more information?
Yeah, Jaime Taets on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with anybody. If there's anything I can do to help, any resources I can provide. The book you can find on thecultureclimb.com, and that points you back to my website, Keystone's website. So you can kind of find all of that on LinkedIn. But on the website for The Culture Climb, we do have downloadable tools you can use with your team. And so one thing I want to share just from a leadership standpoint is we believe, and we wrote this book because we believe that culture is the leader's choice. And so even if you're like, I don't know if my boss or my boss's boss is ever going to be in for doing this kind of work, you can do this work with your own team, no matter how big or small that team is. And that's how you change your world and the world of the people right around you. I give the analogy of, I came from Cargill, an amazing company. I would never go back into Cargill and think we could change the culture at the top, right? The General Mills, the Targets, they're too big. That's not how culture works. Culture can be changed at the division, at the department, at the team level. And that's really what this book is for, is to get to those leaders to say, you have the choice every day of what kind of culture you want to drive in your span of control, whatever that span of control is. And so that's the impact that we hope this book has. It's why we created the free tools. So there's really no excuse for not going out there and just being curious, right? In your own growth as a leader and saying, this is an area I can get better in and I can help my team.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so powerful because it's something I learned very early on was that just because leadership in the company had certain goals, I can interpret them for my team in a way that works for them and works for the type of work we're doing and the impact. And I can create our own goals that not misaligned with the overall goals, but maybe they are more in touch with what our team is actually doing. I have that power as that leader in that group because you and I hear CEOs and other people saying, why aren't my employees more innovative and more industrious? And well, you got to tell them they have some flexibility in how they interpret those overarching larger goals. So right. Jaime, all day. I could talk to you all day. So I really strongly encourage everybody to check out Jaime's books. They are fantastic in the work that she does. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, as always. Appreciate the conversation.
We appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of Schmidt List. The stories shared by our guests are genuinely inspiring and offer insightful knowledge. It's important to remember that success doesn't happen overnight and requires collaboration, learning, and perseverance. If you want to broaden your professional connections, check out Kurt's book, The Little Book of Networking, How to Build Your Career One Conversation at a Time on Amazon. Please stay connected with all things Schmidt List on social media, leave a review for the podcast, and join our community of like-minded entrepreneurs. Thank you for being part of Schmidt List. Keep innovating, collaborating, and chasing your entrepreneurial dreams.